All right, it's great to be here, and it's great that we're having this conversation today about dam removal. In Connecticut, where I do most of my work, there are over 4,000 dams. There simply aren't enough project managers. I'm sure it's the same situation in other states. So it's great to have you here and thinking about hopefully becoming a project manager. Really, I'm not a fish biologist, nor am I an engineer. I feel like oftentimes what I am is some sort of salesman. I'm trying to go in and it's some negotiation that I'm trying to convince this dam owner to do something dramatic in their own backyard, and I can't really quite tell them exactly what it's going to look like. It's just a trust me situation. Doesn't always work so well. So this is the Rutan property. This is the Rutan's house there, and this was their dam. It's about a 140-foot long earthen dam, and right here on the left side of the screen is the stone spillway, so quarried stone spillway. The Rutan Dam sits in the Anguilla Brook watershed. This is about a 13 square mile watershed in southeastern Connecticut, right near the Rhode Island border. It wasn't on our radar, but we learned about this project through the DEP. So first of all, let me just take you back to this watershed map. So small watershed, and there are about 3 dams in the watershed, and the Rutan Dam was actually the second barrier upstream. Just going to touch briefly on what was downstream. So there in the upper right-hand corner of the screen was the Wickety-Quock Pond Dam. This dam was formed by a large glacial erratic called Saddle Rock. It has the red star on it. And over on the left side of the photo is a little walkway. That actually went over the remnants of the original grist mill race. This was Connecticut's first known grist mill. So very historic site, dated back to the 1600s. And if you just look from this aerial photo, you can see on the far left, the blue arrow is the mill race. The middle arrow is this rock called Saddle Rock, at that point with no flow over it. And over on the right was a small rubble dam where we saw potential to build a fishway. So the lower photo is a stone pool and weir fishway, which we actually built with rocks from the removal of the Rutan Dam. The third dam in the watershed, the minor dam, was way up in the upper reaches of the watershed, and it was really determined that there wasn't much usable spawning habitat above that dam. So with fish passage successfully completed at Wickety-Quock Pond Dam and Rutan Pond Dam, we considered this entire watershed would be open for migratory fish. So oftentimes we select the projects that we're working on because they're conservation priorities. We know that there's a significant number of miles of stream that will be available to spawning fish above those barriers. We may know in this case there was only one dam downstream, and we had an opportunity to work with that dam owner. There's any number of reasons or combinations of reasons why we're going to be working at those dams. In this case, we knew there was an abundance of mussels downstream of the dam. This was a very lightly developed watershed, but TNC didn't have a really big presence in southeastern Connecticut. I actually live on the opposite side of the state, closer to the New York border. So this was not on our radar for any of these reasons. But projects can become priorities for other reasons as well. We may have had a reluctant dam owner and now ownership has changed, or there could be problems with maintenance. As Alan said, the situation has changed and the dam has become unstable. And in this case, there were repeated flooding concerns. So southeastern Connecticut got walloped with a few really large storm events in 2009 and then in 2010. And in 2009, the Connecticut DEP was doing some touring of that part of the state, and they went to see this dam, and they said this dam is at risk of failing. In fact, while DEP didn't know that this dam was at risk of failing before their tour, the local municipality knew this. there was a downstream development with about 60 houses, and it had been evacuated 3 times. So the owners at this point, once they had DEP dam safety standing in their yard and saying, you know, you've got to do something about this dam, it's simply not safe, they said, well, you know, what are our options? Well, you can pay to repair your dam, and that's out of your own pocket, or maybe you'd like to consider something else like dam removal. When they thought about the cost to repair the dam and the continued obligation to maintain the dam and inspect it, they decided they'd be interested in meeting with others, and DEP at that point invited the Nature Conservancy to meet with the owners. So you get kind of excited. You see the dam, it's failing, here's an owner that's interested in speaking to you, and you start to dream of the big yellow machine, because it's going to come really soon. Well, maybe not so soon. So before I went to meet with them, I realized, well, as I said, I'm not from this part of the state. Nobody knew me. TNC has a good reputation for land protection throughout the state, but we weren't really known for doing a lot of dam removal projects. So first, I had to learn all that I could about this watershed. I needed to become that trusted salesman that was telling them that they should do something really dramatic with their backyard. So the kinds of things that you need to know, you know, what was the site used for before? What's the ownership history? In this case, Mrs. Rutan had purchased this property because she loved this house at the end of a private dirt road with this beautiful pond. And in fact, she had 2 dogs and a pet goat, and she would walk these dogs and her goat along the earthen dam to the spillway every morning before she went to work. And I have to convince her. I always mention, you know, you got to know if there was ever a consent order issued to the owner to repair the dam, because that takes it out of eligibility for federal funds. So you don't want to go present something as an option to the owner if it actually isn't an option. So you want to be pretty smart about what you've learned. In many cases, there's neighbor concerns. So Alan mentioned this, and Enrico mentioned, you know, having neighbors around an impoundment can make it a little more challenging. Someone just says, I have a brother-in-law who's a lawyer, and the owner says, you know, maybe I'll just do a fish ladder. In this case, we learned something else about the neighbors, and I'll get to that in a second. But the other thing that was important to mention about this was there was a really good, obvious partner in this neighborhood. So the Avalonia Land Conservancy was a local land trust. They actually owned some dams on some of their properties, but they didn't really feel like they had the know-how to engage in a dam removal. And so they agreed to partner with the Nature Conservancy to go forward with trying to secure funds for the dam removal. Regarding the neighbors, so there were no neighbors around this impoundment, but you can see that large roof over on the right. The Rutans had a concern that they had this one neighbor. So this property had been developed for commercial purposes. It was a large manufacturing company that was running large 18-wheeler trucks 24/7, and it was really noisy. So here they had this beautiful property. It was formerly a mink farm, and before that some sort of a sawmill or gristmill operation. We never did learn that. But they thought that maybe with the removal of this dam, they could plant some more trees and be buffered from the noise of those trucks at their neighbors. So they agreed to have a meeting with us. We invited DEP, fisheries. I'm not a fisheries expert, so I always bring in the experts where I need them. And we brought in folks from the Avalonia Land Conservancy. And that first meeting was really about listening to the owners and learning about, you know, the story of the dogs and the goat, and who went fishing in this pond, and did they ever used to take boats out on it, or did the neighborhood use this pond? They were concerned about this picture I was trying to paint, and I'm not a painter. You know, what was it going to look like? And this loss, we're not going to have this pond anymore, and trying to accept what would it be that they would have. I was curious to find out whether they had been engaged with the local community. Were they well known by their neighbors? Did they get along with their neighbors? Was there going to be some uproar if this pond were no longer? And of course, they wanted to know about my history as well. We did learn that Mr. Rutan, so they'd gotten married after Mrs. Rutan had purchased this property. He was a tinkerer, and he liked to play with the low flow gate. And so he had drained the pond before, and he sort of knew that actually along the main channel there was a lot of interesting boulders. We never got to see that because the pond was full. So he shared with us this old historic photograph, and you can see there's the arrow pointing to the stone spillway. But when we saw the dam, this is what it looked like. So Alan showed some dams that, they sort of have a trapezoidal shape, not a straight face like this one. Where the sandbags are, this is where that earthen dam started to fail in 2009. This is when we started to have the conversations with the Rutans. And some of the wood structure on the right-hand side of the photo is where the old mill seat was. So Mr. Rutan had the turbines, and he really knew his way around this dam, but he also realized that this was going to be a huge project if he were going to propose to his wife that they maintain a dam. So we started off with some public meetings with Avalonia Land Conservancy. We let them take the lead on all of this, but we stood by as their partner. We helped to write the grants. We came to the meetings to be able to talk about our experience doing dam removal and fish passage projects. We went to commissions to try to get the local boards to understand this project and to be advocates for it. And we continued to convene as a group to figure out what our options were for possible funding. So in 2009, we applied to a few grants. We got shot down. American Rivers likes to fund dam removal, but we didn't have the option of proposing dam removal at Wickety-Quack Pond Dam. So our application probably scored fewer points than some others. But in April of 2010, the Long Island Sound Futures Fund, which is a grant administered through National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, announced another grant round, and we applied again. And this time, rather than separating it into two phases, which we had proposed for American Rivers, we said, okay, we want to do design, I missed permitting, but design, permitting, and construction all in one. And we were awarded a grant of $122,000, a little bit more than that, to do the whole fell swoop. We also got some funding from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, or I should say Avalonia Land Conservancy did, because they were the lead. And Wickety-Quack Pond Dam, I mentioned, we used the stones. That actually was a donated cost. The stones had a value. We didn't have to go and purchase them from someplace else. And we worked with a seasonal crew from DEP, and we built that pool of We Are Fishway ourselves at no cost. So that was our part of our match. I think Alan mentioned sediment sampling. So while our application was under consideration with Long Island Sound Futures Fund, we went and conducted our sediment sampling. This was also part of our match to the grant. We guessed that the sediment was going to be clean because it's such a lightly developed watershed, and in fact that was the case. So we didn't have a concern with contaminated sediments. And if you noticed in the first picture, the Rutans owned quite a bit of property, and they agreed that we could dump the sediment on their property. So that was also a huge cost savings. During 2010 and 11, we started to develop the plan, so the logistics. How was this all going to work? We got our funding in the fall of 2010. We put together our RFP for the engineering that winter. We put together some guidelines for scoring those proposals that we were going to be receiving, and we put together a small team that would review the proposals or bids that came in. And we ended up contracting with an engineering firm called Fuss & O'Neill. So we're moving along. We think that probably 2011 we're going to be able to get through this and remove the dam. And I should mention in March of 2010 we had another big flood. So everyone was really anxious for this to happen. So continuing with our planning, we found out that there are two Native American tribes that had interest in this area, so we had to make sure that the Pequots and the Mohegans, their fears that we were going to be disrupting some archaeological site of interest were allayed. We said, you know, there's been a dam here for a long time. Whatever disruption to any native interests probably happened when this dam was constructed, and they agreed that, you know, you photo document anything and you're probably right. Then we had to go to the Natural Diversity Database, and they look at their, what we call the blob map, and they said, oh, what do you know, there's a blob right over on Gula Brook. There's a white river crayfish. And so we had to have a plan for dealing with white river crayfish. We went through our State Historic Preservation Office, and we put our permit applications together, both for the Army Corps and the Connecticut DEP. During that fall, our governor decided he had some transportation projects that were really important, and so he pulled all of the permit reviewers off of anything else so that they could review his transportation projects. So our permit review took a little while, and we lost our window of construction opportunity. So normally we can only do this type of construction in a river during low flows, so we typically say from the end of July till maybe the end of September. So the year we lost it. So we continued to plan. We were excited partnering with Avalonia Land Conservancy because the president of that land trust was a former Army Corps of Engineers engineer. And so he was going to provide engineering oversight, which was required by our permits during construction. And he was a great help. We thought he might even keep some of our own contracted engineers' costs down a little bit. But when push came to shove, we had our permits, so Avalonia Land Conservancy, it's their names on the permit, TNC is supporting them. We start to get to final design, and we're going to put an RFP out for our contractor, and the president of Land Conservancy says, you know, I've got some concerns about my personal liability. I don't feel comfortable doing this. The Land Conservancy is backing out. So we quick, you know, okay, call NIFWIF and say, okay, TNC is going to take the lead. We have a little change here, and then we have to figure out match again because he was going to provide engineering oversight. Now we don't have that. I'm not an engineer. Now I have to hire an engineer to provide that oversight. So we renegotiate our agreements with our funders, and we put out our RFP for the contractor. And the contractor sees the engineer's plan. So this is the dam, and the dark line is access. So they are proposing to come in downstream of the dam to get at the dam. They are proposing to go up along the pond and then through the side of the pond coming from the west, and then work up and down the channel. And it's a lot of disturbance. There's some wetlands over where the T is on the edge of the pond, and there's some obligate wetland plants, and there's some discussion about what we're going to have to do with all of those buttonbush, which we say they're going to be high and dry once we've drained the pond. They say we need to remove them and then put them back in place. You know, so anyway, the contractor comes in, and this is the water diversion which is proposed. So Cofferdam upstream out to a pump, and then back down through the dam to the downstream channel. Contractor, we contract with him, so he bids on that plan, and then we contract with him, and then he says, can we revisit the plan a little bit, because we have a different idea. And he says, so we could go along Mr. Rutan's yard. You see those oval shapes, that's where they're going to dump sediment. So we'll get over to the sediment piles, but we can come down. Why can't we drive across the dam? And so we talked to everybody, and they said, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe you can drive across the dam. And they said, in the end, we can just work from the dam upstream and remove the sediment that we have to remove. So this means a change in plans. We have to go back to the permitters. So we go back to Army Corps and back to DEP. They come out to the site, and they said, that seems, if they think they can drive across that earthen dam, you saw it with the stone wall on one side, but the pond's going to be gone, so they can do that. So at last, we got started. So this is now the summer of 2012. Drain the pond. Just as we said, there's nearly 1,000 mussels that are there below the dam. Those get removed upstream. Find hundreds of fish in the pond. Those get netted out. And the contractor comes to the site, sets up his water diversion. So lower left, we have the Cofferdam being installed. The pond's pretty well drained out. They have a big pump, and they're pumping. Their pipe is running across the sediment and down to that low flow outlet and through the historic mill race. And that's the lower right is the water going downstream back into the channel. Willow Brook, you remember. Here's their, so really gutsy driver. Not only is he driving this gigantic truck, but he's always in reverse, going back out so that they can fill the back. And maybe even gutsier, stand behind the truck. And this is their operation. They start to bring down the level of the earthen dam. They start to remove the sediment that's located behind the dam. And in 6 days, from beginning to end, we have no more dam. So that's last scoops of sediment and filling the truck. And finally, standing downstream, looking upstream, this is the dam being removed. December, so this was August, it was removed. By December, we already had vegetation coming back right around the area that had been most heavily disturbed with machinery. And given time, goes from this to this to this. This was a seed bank that had been underwater for an estimated 80 years. This is filled with native vegetation. We do invasive plant monitoring here. We have an obligation through our Army Corps permit to do monitoring for 5 years. I think we have 1 more year. And we have people that sign up to come because I've had landscape architects that say, I want to develop that. How do I go find a dam? I'll remove it. And then this is looking up the channel. So it's really a really unbelievable thing. And then I just, I think when you do this work, it's been said already today that no 2 projects are the same. I have another project. It doesn't look anything like this, but we're hopeful. But why do we do it? So there are these things. When you get engaged, you need to be really nimble. You need to be a great communicator. You certainly need to be comfortable with uncertainty. But we also need to share our successes and celebrate our accomplishments. And so I just wanted to remind you why it is that we are doing this, and I'm hoping this is going to work. Well, there's another way to do this. Let's see if I can get this a different way. Anyway, I have a great video from another dam site, but it doesn't seem to want to do that. See how nimble they can be. Well, anyway, I'll be playing. Yeah, I do. If you can go back to the flash drive. Just no, not good. Unknown error. All right. Well, it's a lot of fish to do that. All right. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So this is river herring and spot-tailed shiner below another dam where I snorkeled this spring. And every year I miss this, and someone will say, oh, I was snorkeling there yesterday, you wouldn't have believed the fish. And then I go, and it's like, well, I saw a few, but this time we really hit it. So anyway, that's why we do it. So thank you. And I'm happy to take questions if there are a few. Yes?
My concern, in that situation, you had a wonderful seed bank, and you had some great natives come back in. If you're in an urbanized situation and you've got Japanese knotweed and Phragmites in that upstream area,
Well, I think there's always a
Have you ever dealt with that?
No, I mean, we've done other dam removals where we've had a significant 7-foot layer thick leaf layer, and we haven't had the revegetation there. I think in any river system, there are going to be invasives. Likely, there's some spot upstream where there are invasive species, and you have that risk of seed material floating downstream and colonizing. But under the, in what was a former impoundment, you have seed that was 75 or 80 or old, many, many years old. We haven't had the experience, I haven't had the experience that we have an abundance of invasives popping up after the dam has been removed. But, I won't say it won't happen, because anything can happen. So, anybody else? All right.
Actually, one question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so that was a great success story. How many times that you removed a dam do you not have such a great success story where the people are not satisfied with the way the property ends up looking and it just looks like a mess?
So I've been involved with 7, and the most recent one we finished in Lyme just last winter. And there were some challenges with that. There really was a leaf layer that was 7 feet thick. And so what we had hoped, there was no low-level outlets. Alan mentioned if the low-level outlet has been opened a few times and the pond's been allowed to sort of flush itself. That hadn't happened. And this pond, which was about a 3.5-acre pond, Rutan was about a 1-acre pond. But this 3-acre pond, it was just filled. So it was a dead zone. And then we learned when we went into that project that the owner's grandfather had once bulldozed the pond to make it deeper, so it was a little challenging to figuring out where the historic stream channel was. And where we ended up locating the historic stream channel, we found a natural riffle, so we're pretty confident we got it close to right, if not exactly right. But there's all these other wet areas. So, I think the most important lesson is it takes time. It takes time for these rivers to restore themselves. This one was really quick, but I think they do come back, and the benefits far outweigh the negatives.